The silent watch planet Solara was dying. The once thriving world, full of life and culture, had become a shadow of its former self. The Empire had arrived years ago, sweeping across the planet like a storm. What was once a peaceful society was now bound by chains, resources drained, citizens oppressed, and the once beautiful landscape scarred by the Empire's relentless exploitation for years. Solara had sent out desperate messages, pleading for help from anyone who could hear. But no one responded. The galaxy was busy with its own struggles, and Solara was just one more forgotten world, falling under the boot of an empire that cared only for its power. But deep in the silence of space, something was stirring. In the darkness, humanity had been watching. They had seen the suffering, the desperation. They had watched as the Empire expanded its reach, crushing weaker planets one by one. Humanity was not a species that would sit idly by and watch the galaxy burn. They were not like the other powers, waiting for someone else to act. Humanity had their own plans, and they were ready to make their move. In a hidden fleet, deep within a nebula, a warship, the flagship of humanity's new power, sat quietly, waiting for its orders. The Genesis, the greatest ship humanity had ever built, was a masterpiece of technology, designed to challenge the Empire's strongest forces. It was armed with the most advanced weaponry and technology the galaxy had ever seen, far beyond anything the Empire could imagine. The crew aboard the Genesis had been waiting for this moment, the moment they would make their presence known to the galaxy. Commander Carter stood at the front of the ship's command center, gazing out at the stars. The vastness of space stretched out before him, a constant reminder of how small they all were in the grand scheme of things. But humanity had never been one to shy away from challenges. This was their time to act, and they were ready. Status report, Carter said, his voice calm but firm. Sophia, his trusted second-in-command, turned to him from the control panel. All systems are green, Commander, we're ready to move. The fleet is in position, waiting for your orders. Carter nodded. They had spent years building up this fleet, preparing for the day when humanity would rise. Now, that day had come. The Genesis was the symbol of humanity's strength, a weapon of unparalleled power. But it wasn't just about the warships. It was about what they represented: the will to fight back, the desire to protect the weak, and the belief that humanity could make a difference in a galaxy ruled by fear. The people of Solara need us, Carter said softly, but with a resolve that resonated with his crew. This is why we're here. We're not just fighting the Empire. We're fighting for the future of the galaxy. And we'll make sure the galaxy knows that humanity will never back down. Sophia gave a firm nod. Understood, Commander, we've already made our mark. We've been watching the Empire for years, waiting for the right moment. This is it. The crew moved quickly, final preparations being made as the countdown began. Carter could feel the weight of the decision in the air, but he knew it was the right one. The warships around the Genesis were part of the fleet humanity had quietly assembled, each one capable of destruction on a scale the galaxy had never seen. The time to strike had arrived, and Solara was just the beginning. Across the galaxy, on the surface of Solara, the people continued their lives under the Empire's iron rule, unaware that help was finally on the way. Every day, they suffered, watching as their resources were drained, their planet's beauty destroyed. But they held on to a faint hope, an unspoken belief that one day someone would come to their rescue. In the Empire's command center, General Corsat, his hands clasped in front of him as he watched the reports come in. Solara had been under strict control for years, its resources stripped and its people subjugated. The Empire had made sure that no one could rise against them here. But as Kor read the latest intelligence, something didn't sit right. There had been rumors, a strange energy signature from the far reaches of the galaxy. Something that shouldn't exist, not in this region of space. What is this? Kor muttered. Looking at the data, he had no idea what it meant, but the reports were consistent. Something was moving in the darkness, something powerful. He could feel the weight of the unknown bearing down on him. He leaned forward, his fingers tapping the table as he processed the information. Track that signal. I want to know who or what is out there, he ordered. As his officers scrambled to respond, Kor's mind raced. The Empire's strength was unmatched. But there was always the possibility that someone could challenge them. The unknown energy signatures could mean many things. And if it was an enemy fleet, well, the Empire would have to be prepared for whatever was coming next. Above Solara, the Genesis moved silently through the void, its engines glowing softly against the blackness of space. Carter stood on the observation deck, watching the planet below. The crew was ready. And now it was time to act. They had trained for this moment. They had prepared for this battle, knowing that the Empire's reign of terror would not be allowed to continue. The time for waiting was over. Humanity was here, and soon, the galaxy would know their name. The first strike humanity unleashed stars seemed to flicker as the Genesis powered up, its massive warship cutting through space with an intensity that made it feel alive. Humanity's fleet, though smaller than the Empire's, was a machine built for one thing: to deliver justice to those who had suffered under the Empire's rule. The crew was ready, the countdown was complete, and the battle to free Zalara was about to begin. Commander Carter stood at the helm of the ship, his eyes fixed on the distant planet. Zalara, a world ravaged by years of oppression, had waited far too long for deliverance. Now, humanity was here to bring the fight to the Empire. No more waiting, no more hoping. This was a mission that could not fail. Ready the first strike, Carter commanded, his voice low and steady. Let them know humanity is here. Sophia, standing beside him, gave a quick nod, signaling the crew to prepare for the assault. The fleet behind them was ready to engage. Their warships, sleek and powerful, moved with deadly precision, awaiting the signal to strike. With a deep breath, Carter issued the order, launched the first wave. The Empire had not anticipated this. They had underestimated humanity's resolve, assuming that their empire, with its vast power, would remain unchallenged. But as the Genesis fired its first volley of dark matter missiles, the Empire's defenses fell apart. The weapons cut through their shields like paper, hitting their target with perfect precision. Within seconds, the first wave of attacks left the Empire's front lines in ruins. Zalara's skies, once silent, now rang with the sound of battle. The Empire's forces scrambled to respond, but they were too slow. Humanity's ships moved quickly, systematically tearing apart the Empire's forces one by one. The energy pulses from their weapons lit up the void of space, streaking across the battlefield in a dazzling display of power. General Kor, aboard his flagship, watched in disbelief as his defenses were obliterated. What in the galaxy is happening? He growled, his hands tightening around the armrest of his command chair. How are they so powerful? His officers scrambled to respond. Sir, we've never seen ships like these before. Their firepower, it's unmatched. We can't track them fast enough. Kor's face grew dark with fury. Humanity had been nothing more than a distant, weak species in his eyes. A small force at the edge of the galaxy, but now they were an unstoppable force. This sudden, unexpected assault was unlike anything he had ever prepared for. Meanwhile, on the surface of Zalara, the people were beginning to feel a shift in the air. For so long, they had lived under the harsh rule of the Empire, their cries for help ignored by the galaxy's most powerful factions. But now they watched as the Empire's hold began to crumble before their eyes. The explosions in the sky were like music to their ears. The people had waited for this day, prayed for it, and now it was happening. Zalara's leaders had long ago lost hope that anyone would come to their aid. But humanity's rival was a beacon of hope. The warships streaking across the sky were proof that the galaxy had not abandoned them. It's happening, one of the Zalaran leaders whispered, his eyes wide as he watched the chaos unfolding in orbit. We're free. But even as they celebrated, they knew the battle was far from over. The Empire wouldn't give up this easily. General Kor would surely retaliate, and the struggle for Zalara's freedom would continue. But in that moment, they felt something they hadn't felt in years: hope. Back on the Genesis, Carter stood at the command deck, watching the Empire's fleet scramble to regroup. Their ships were trying to retaliate, but humanity's warships were faster, more agile, and better equipped. Each strike was a message to the galaxy, a declaration that humanity would no longer remain on the sidelines. They had come to take what was rightfully theirs. Commander, Sophia said, her voice filled with urgency, the Empire is regrouping. They're sending in reinforcements from their main fleet. Carter's expression hardened. They can send whatever they want. We've already broken their front lines. They won't recover from this. We hit them again, and this time we go straight for the heart. The battle raged for hours, but humanity's resolve remained unshaken. As the Genesis moved deeper into the Empire's defenses, the Empire's ships began to fall one by one. Humanity's warships targeted the Empire's command centers, their supply depots, and their communication hubs, crippling the enemy's ability to respond effectively. In the heart of the battle, Carter's voice came through the comms. Prepare for the final strike. We're going to show the Empire that they are no longer in control of Zalara. As humanity's forces closed in on the final stretch of the battle, General Kor, now desperate, gave his orders: send the rest of our fleet to Zalara's defense. We can't let this happen, not like this. But it was too late. The Empire's forces had already been scattered, and their reinforcements were too far away to make a difference. The Genesis fired its final missile, a blast so powerful it tore through the heart of the Empire's command ship, sending it into a fiery explosion. As the dust settled, Carter watched the Empire's fleet disintegrate. Zalara was free, but humanity's fight had only just begun. The Empire's wrath, retaliation from the Shadows battle had been won. But the galaxy was far from safe. Humanity's warships had struck a blow to the Empire's once unchallenged power. But in the silence that followed the storm, the threat of retaliation loomed large. General Kor, though defeated, was not a man to accept loss easily. His defeat in orbit over Zalara was a humiliation. But he was determined to ensure that humanity would not go unpunished. The Empire had been wounded, but it wasn't dead, and Kor's pride would not let him rest until he had avenged his forces. While Carter and his crew aboard the Genesis celebrated their victory, a hidden part of the Empire was already at work. The dark corners of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of the Genesis's sensors, began to stir. The remnants of the Empire's military loyalists who had escaped the destruction were regrouping in secret, gathering their forces for a counterattack. On a distant, isolated moon in the Outer Rim, a new, secret weapon was being built. The Empire's best engineers, now working outside the Empire's direct control, were constructing an army of war machines that would rival humanity's dark matter warships. These weapons were designed not just for brute force, but for subterfuge, silent, deadly, and capable of hitting humanity where it hurt the most, its alliances. They think they've won, General Kor's voice echoed through the cold chambers of the secret base, his eyes burning with hatred. But they have no idea what we're capable of. We've learned from our mistakes, and we will rise again. His words were not just for the engineers but for the Empire's last loyal soldiers, who had followed him into exile. Humanity made the mistake of thinking they can stand alone, but this galaxy is not theirs to control. It's time to remind them of that. Back aboard the Genesis, Carter stood before his crew, reviewing the status of their recent victory. Zalara was now under the protection of humanity's fleet, but it had come at a great cost. Several of their ships were damaged in the battle, and the galaxy was watching closely to see how humanity would respond to this growing threat. From the Empire's remnants, we've hit them hard, but we can't relax just yet, Carter said, his voice strong but tinged with concern. The Empire won't just vanish. General Kor may be defeated for now, but there are still factions out there ruthless, determined, and ready to strike. Sophia, standing at his side, nodded. They'll be back, Commander. It's only a matter of time before they rebuild their strength. Carter turned to her, his expression serious. We need to find them before they can strike. Humanity isn't just about fighting, we're about stopping the chaos before it spreads. We need to go on the offensive. We can't let these rogue factions gain power again. We need to show them that the galaxy won't return to the way it was. The quiet tension that filled the crew quarters of the Genesis was palpable. As they moved deeper into the galaxy, the crew knew that they were not just facing a battle for Zalara's freedom. They were fighting for the entire galaxy. Their mission had grown from one of survival to one of leadership. Humanity was no longer just a rebel force, it was the galaxy's new hope. But with that hope came responsibility. The crew of the Genesis prepared for their next phase. They couldn't wait for the Empire to strike again. They needed to take action to neutralize the remnants before they could regroup. The galaxy had tasted freedom, but it was still fragile. If humanity was to keep the peace, they would have to do more than just fight. They would need to outthink and outmaneuver their enemies. As the Genesis and its fleet moved deeper into the galaxy, they found themselves facing a growing threat. From within, several systems that had supported humanity's rise now turned wary. Some felt that humanity was just another empire in the making, and others feared what they didn't understand. The galaxy, once united under the Empire's banner, was now a patchwork of alliances, each one fragile, each one on the brink of collapse. The syndicated group of power-hungry remnants of the old empire had begun to spread misinformation, attempting to turn the galaxy's systems against humanity. Their goal was simple: destabilize humanity's leadership and fill the vacuum left by the Empire's fall. Humanity's fleet was strong, but even strength couldn't win against the web of lies being spun in the shadows. The Genesis and its crew were about to find themselves in a new kind of battle, one of perception and diplomacy, not just combat. Aboard the Genesis, Carter stood before a holographic map of the galaxy. The message was clear: humanity had to move fast to avoid civil war. The Empire's loyalists were already beginning to rally, and if they could rally enough support, they would bring the galaxy to the brink of chaos. We have to stop them before they turn the galaxy against us, Carter said. We can't just fight them, we need to expose the truth and show the galaxy that humanity is not the Empire. Sophia turned to him. They're trying to make us the new enemy, Commander. We need to make it clear that we're not the ones causing the chaos. Carter nodded. Exactly. We have to show the galaxy that we're here to protect them, not rule them. If we don't act quickly, we'll lose everything we've fought for. As the crew of the Genesis prepared to face this new threat, they knew that the battle for the future of the galaxy would require more than just advanced technology or firepower. It would require diplomacy, trust, and a unified front. Humanity's victory over the Empire had proven that they could fight for freedom, but could they fight for peace? With the Syndicate working to tear apart their hard-won alliances, the crew of the Genesis was about to embark on a new kind of mission, one where the enemy was not just a fleet, but the divisions within the galaxy itself. The stakes had never been higher. Asterisk, the hidden faction, deceit, and division in the shadows. Warships of humanity had made their mark on the galaxy. The Empire had been shattered, its command decimated, and its once dominant fleets reduced to nothing more than remnants drifting in the void. Yet even in the wake of this monumental victory, a darker force began to emerge from the shadows. The Syndicate, a clandestine faction of Empire loyalists and power-hungry individuals, was moving swiftly to exploit the growing uncertainty among the galaxy's systems. Unlike the Empire, which had ruled through sheer force, the Syndicate played the game of politics and influence. They understood the power of fear, of whispered lies, and of exploiting the cracks in the fragile alliances humanity had worked so hard to build. While humanity focused on dismantling the remnants of the Empire's military, the Syndicate was working behind closed doors to turn the galaxy against them. On the Genesis, Carter and his crew were starting to realize the full scale of the threat humanity faced. Solara had been a victory, but now the galaxy was facing an enemy that was far more insidious than any fleet. The Syndicate and its network of spies, diplomats, and conspirators. Their influence spread through trade routes, power centers, and even within the systems that had pledged allegiance to humanity. "We've won the battle," Carter said, his voice tight with concern as he stood before his crew. "But the war isn't over. The Syndicate has made sure of that. They're working from the shadows, and they're trying to turn every system against us." Sophia crossed her arms, her face thoughtful. "They know how to play the game. They're not coming at us with ships or weapons, they're coming at us with lies. We're not just fighting for Solara anymore, we're fighting for every world that's aligned with us." Carter nodded, his mind racing. "We can't ignore them. If we let them grow, if we let them divide us, they'll do more than cripple our alliances. They'll take away everything we've fought for. We need to hit them where it hurts, expose their lies, and show the galaxy who they really are." Meanwhile, the Syndicate was making moves that would shake the galaxy to its core. Their first target, Valoria, one of the most powerful trade hubs in the galaxy. For years, Valoria had been a neutral system, carefully balancing its alliances to avoid drawing the attention of either the Empire or humanity. But with humanity's rise, Valoria had been forced to choose sides, and they had chosen humanity. The Syndicate saw this as an opportunity, a perfect place to begin turning the tide in their favor. In a quiet room in Valoria's capital, Senator Varan, a powerful politician and former ally of the Empire, met with Syndicate operatives. His voice was low, tinged with suspicion. "Humanity's power is growing, but they're not yet untouchable. If we can plant the seeds of doubt, if we can turn the neutral systems against them, we can take control of the galaxy without firing a single shot." A Syndicate operative, hidden in the shadows, nodded. "We have the means to do it. The galaxy is already divided. All we need to do is widen the cracks, a few well-placed lies, a few corrupted leaders, and the galaxy will turn against humanity. The people don't trust them. They only see the power of their warships, not the hearts of their leaders." Varan smiled darkly, a calculating glint in his eyes. "Then let's show them that the galaxy doesn't need a new empire. Let's give them something better, something more familiar." Back aboard the Genesis, Carter was beginning to feel the pressure. Their victory over the Empire had come at a great cost, and now, just when they thought they had the galaxy in their grasp, a new enemy had emerged, an enemy that didn't fight with ships or weapons, but with deception, politics, and subversion. The Syndicate was an enemy that played a far more dangerous game. "We need to expose them," Carter said to his crew, his tone resolute. "We can't let them continue to work in the shadows. If we do, they'll tear this galaxy apart piece by piece. We need to take the fight to them, but not with force. We need to use our influence, our allies, to counter their lies." Sophia nodded, understanding what had to be done. "It's not just about winning battles anymore, Carter. It's about winning hearts and minds. The Syndicate isn't just attacking us, they're attacking the galaxy's faith in us." Humanity's response was swift, but the challenge was immense. As the Genesis moved closer to Valoria, Carter's crew worked tirelessly to uncover the truth behind the Syndicate's operations. They launched covert missions to gather intel, disrupted their communication networks, and infiltrated their supply chains. But the Syndicate was prepared. Their operatives were everywhere, and the deeper humanity dug, the more dangerous the situation became. But there was no turning back. Humanity had fought too long and too hard to let the Syndicate tear apart the peace they had worked for. The first step was to stop them from undermining their allies. The second step was to expose their network to the galaxy, and for that, they needed to strike quickly, decisively. The real test of humanity's strength was not in their ability to fight the Syndicate head-on. It was in their ability to lead with integrity and wisdom. The Syndicate was playing a game of power, but humanity was fighting for a different cause: freedom, unity, and the future of the galaxy. As the Genesis moved into position, Carter knew that this would not be a battle of strength, it would be a battle of truth. The galaxy's future depended on whether humanity could prove that their rise to power wasn't about domination, it was about creating a new future, one where every system had a voice. The web of deceit, the battle for the future humanities. Warships had cut through the Empire's defenses like a hot knife through butter. They had won every battle they'd faced so far, but as the dust settled from their victory, it became clear that the true war was not fought on the battlefield, it was fought in the hearts and minds of the galaxy's people. The Syndicate had learned to use that very truth against them. Carter stood at the command deck of the Genesis, gazing out at the stars as he considered the growing unrest across the galaxy. The Syndicate had been playing a long, slow game, one where every whispered lie, every manipulated political move, had set the stage for a larger conflict. They weren't just attacking humanity's military might. They were tearing apart the very fabric of the alliances that humanity had worked so hard to build. "They're spreading propaganda," Sophia said as she stepped into the command center, bringing Carter's thoughts back to the present. "Every day, there are more reports of systems questioning our intentions. We've made mistakes people are starting to doubt whether we're here to free them or just replace the Empire." Carter clenched his fists, frustration evident in his voice. "We knew this wouldn't be easy, but I didn't think they'd play the game this well. We've been fighting battles on all fronts, physical, political, and now, in the very minds of the people we're trying to protect." Sophia nodded, her gaze hardening. "We can't just fight the Syndicate in the shadows anymore. We need to expose them for what they really are: manipulators, liars, and enemies of the galaxy. If we don't stop them now, they'll tear everything we've worked for apart." The Syndicate had planted its seeds of doubt in the most strategic places. It wasn't just about spreading rumors or lies. They had planted operatives in the highest echelons of governments, making it easy to turn systems against humanity. Every system that had supported humanity's rise was now a target, and the Syndicate was moving faster than the Genesis could catch up. One of their first major victories came on the planet of Kareth, an influential trade hub located at the intersection of several vital trade routes. The Syndicate had convinced the Kareth Council that humanity's true goal was to monopolize trade in the galaxy, turning the Genesis from a beacon of hope into an oppressive symbol of imperialism. "We can't let this stand," Carter said, his voice sharp as he watched the reports flood in. "If we lose Kareth, the rest of the neutral systems will start to fall. We need to stop the Syndicate here and now." But the question remained: how? The Syndicate wasn't a conventional enemy. They didn't rely on fleets or weapons. They thrived on misinformation and division. Sophia's voice broke the silence. "We've got an ally on Kareth, Counselor Lares. She's been feeding us information about the Syndicate's moves from within, but she's been growing more and more isolated. The Syndicate is closing in on her position. We can't afford to lose her," Carter replied quickly. "If we can get to Lares before the Syndicate does, we might have a chance at turning Kareth back in our favor. We need to move fast." The plan was simple but dangerous. A covert strike team would infiltrate Kareth's capital city, where Syndicate operatives had already surrounded Counselor Lares. If they could get to her before the Syndicate took control of her, they might just have the leverage they needed to expose the truth to the galaxy. The Genesis dropped out of hyperspace just outside the planet's atmosphere. The mission was a race against time, and Carter knew the risks. If they failed, the ripple effect would be catastrophic. More systems would turn away from humanity, and the Syndicate would solidify its hold on the galaxy. As the small strike team made its way through the city's underbelly, the tension was palpable. The streets were eerily quiet, as though the city was holding its breath. Syndicate operatives, disguised as ordinary civilians, moved in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The team's task wasn't just to extract Lares, it was to ensure that the truth about the Syndicate would reach the people of Kareth. They reached the safe house where Lares was being held. The door swung open and she stood there, her eyes sharp and alert. Despite the clear exhaustion on her face, "You're too late," she said quietly, her voice almost resigned. "The Syndicate has already turned the people against you. It's not enough to fight with weapons, Commander. They've already won their war." Carter shook his head. "Not yet. We haven't lost this galaxy, but we need your help. If you speak out against them, we can show the galaxy the truth. We can stop them." With Lares' testimony, the Genesis and its fleet moved swiftly. broadcasting the truth about the Syndicate's manipulations across the galaxy. Every system that had been led astray by the Syndicate now saw their lies exposed. The Syndicate's grip on the galaxy began to slip, one world at a time. But the fight was far from over. The Syndicate's leaders had planned for every eventuality, and their next move would be even more devastating. The battle against the Syndicate was not just about strength, it was about perception, trust, and the future of the galaxy. Humanity had not only won battles, they had exposed the corruption that lurked in the shadows. Now, they had to ensure that their victory was more than just a fleeting moment in time. As Carter looked out at the stars, he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had been set on a new path, but it was one that would require all of humanity's strength and resolve to keep moving forward. The final gambit, humanity's test of unity. Dust had settled on Kareth, but the war was far from over. Humanity had struck a decisive blow to the Syndicate with the truth, exposing their lies to the galaxy. However, the Syndicate had never been about brute force. They had always been about the slow, meticulous erosion of trust. And now that their plans had been disrupted, they would fight back with everything they had left. Carter stood at the bridge of the Genesis, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. His fingers drummed on the console as the cold reality of the situation settled in. The Syndicate had been dealt a serious blow, but they weren't done. They still had the resources, the networks, and the secret alliances needed to make a comeback. "We've exposed them," Sophia said, breaking the silence. "But the galaxy still isn't united. There are systems that doubt us, and the Syndicate will exploit that. They'll use the fear of a new empire against us." Carter nodded grimly. "It's not just about defeating them anymore. It's about proving we're different from what the empire was. We can't afford another war, not one that tears the galaxy apart. If we're going to stop the Syndicate and their influence, we need to bring everyone together. We need to show them that humanity is about something more than power. We're about unity." The Genesis and its fleet moved into the neutral systems, where the Syndicate's whispers were loudest. These were the systems that hadn't yet chosen a side, sitting on the fence, unsure whether to trust humanity or to return to the chaos that the Empire had left behind. Humanity's fleet, though powerful, was still a symbol of the unknown. They had to prove that their rise wasn't just a new kind of oppression, that they weren't just going to replace one tyrant with another. The first stop was the mining colony of Darnan 5, a prosperous system at the heart of a trade route. Darnan 5 had been a critical supplier for both the Empire and the Syndicate, but with the Empire's fall, its leaders had been divided, and the systems there were now unsure about the future. The Syndicate had already begun to spread rumors, claiming that humanity's rise was nothing more than a new empire in the making. They were calling for independence, for the freedom to choose their own fate without humanity's interference. But Carter knew that their future would be shaped here, on Darnan 5. If they couldn't win the neutral systems, humanity's victory over the Empire would mean nothing. The negotiation was tense. The leaders of Darnan 5 had heard the Syndicate's propaganda, and their trust in humanity was fragile. Senator Valara, a key figure in the colony's government, was hesitant to align with humanity. "You've shown us strength," she said, her voice cautious, "but we've seen this before. The Empire promised peace, and they gave us nothing but suffering. How can we be sure you won't do the same?" Carter met her gaze directly, his voice firm but calm. "We're not here to rule. We're here to protect, to build something better than what the Empire offered. But it's not just about strength, it's about trust, and trust isn't built with weapons. It's built with action. What do you want from us, Senator? What will it take to prove that humanity is not the same as the Empire?" Valara's eyes narrowed, clearly weighing her options. "It's not just about promises, it's about proving you're different. We've had enough of leaders who talk about peace but build empires. We want a galaxy where we can stand together without fear." Sophia stepped forward. "Then help us build it. Help us expose the Syndicate for what they are, fearmongers. If you stand with us, we can show the galaxy that humanity's rise is about freedom, not domination." Valara hesitated, then nodded. "All right, Commander, we'll give you our support. But if you betray that trust, we'll fight you just as we fought the Empire." The galaxy held its breath as Darnan 5 became the first of many systems to formally pledge allegiance to humanity's cause. With each new ally, the Syndicate's influence weakened. But the battle was far from over. The Syndicate was spreading rumors, causing instability, and pushing systems to question humanity's intentions. "Every victory counts," Carter said, standing at the window of the Genesis as they prepared to move to the next system. "But we have to prove that our strength doesn't come from war, it comes from our ability to unite. To lead with respect, not fear." Sophia smiled, though her expression was one of resolve. "It's a long road ahead, Commander, but we've started the journey and there's no turning back." As the Genesis moved from system to system, Humanity's message spread. They weren't there to conquer, they were there to lead by example. To show the galaxy that peace was possible through unity and trust. But the Syndicate was not idle, they had their own plans to reclaim the galaxy. And they would stop at nothing to destabilize humanity's fragile alliances. The stakes were high, and humanity was caught in a delicate balance between power and diplomacy. They had proven their might in battle, but could they prove their worth as the true leaders of the galaxy in the shadows? The Syndicate was watching, waiting for humanity to slip up. They were building their own alliances, spreading lies, and preparing for the final confrontation. But for now, humanity had the upper hand. The galaxy was beginning to realize that this new power humanity was different. But would it be enough to win the peace, or would the galaxy fall into chaos? Once again, asterisk. The final truth revealing the heart of deception. The galaxy was on the verge of a new era. But not everyone was ready for it. Humanity's influence was growing. But so too were the Syndicate's efforts to tear it apart from the inside. Every victory, every step toward unity seemed to spark a new wave of chaos. The Syndicate's network had infiltrated more than just governments, they had sown seeds of doubt. Deep within the hearts of the galaxy's people, Carter and his crew aboard the Genesis had struck at the Syndicate's strongholds, exposed their lies, and won over several key systems. Yet, the most dangerous challenge was still ahead, showing the galaxy that humanity's rise was not simple. Why a power grab, that their fight for freedom was real, and that they were not just another empire in the making, but with the Syndicate's power growing in the shadows. Humanity's fight was now more than a military struggle, it was a fight for the truth. The Syndicate had their eyes set on one last, critical system, Valoria. This prosperous, influential trade hub was the heart of the galaxy's economic power. It was also the place where the greatest lies were spun, and where the Syndicate's most dangerous members had taken root. Their goal was clear: if they could turn Valoria against humanity, they could break the fragile alliances humanity had built. Turning the tide of the war, Senator Varon, once a key ally to humanity, had become a pawn in the Syndicate's game. His influence over Valoria's leaders was unmatched. But the Syndicate had subtly manipulated his beliefs. They had painted humanity as nothing more than another occupying force, ready to take control of Valoria's trade routes and resources. But Carter had another plan. If humanity could expose the Syndicate's true intentions on Valoria, they could unravel their hold over the galaxy's economic and political systems. Commander Sophia said, her voice tight with urgency, the Syndicate has placed one of their most powerful operatives in Valoria's High Council. If we strike too soon, they'll blame us for destabilizing the system, but if we don't act now, they'll have total control. Carter's brow furrowed. We need proof. Proof that the Syndicate has been manipulating the system and using Valoria to spread fear across the galaxy. Exactly, Sophia replied. We expose their deception to the galaxy. We show them the truth. We can't let Valoria fall to lies. The team aboard the Genesis launched a covert operation to infiltrate Valoria's political center. With their warships hovering at the planet's edge, Carter's crew moved quickly, using advanced stealth technology to avoid detection. They needed to gather the necessary evidence to expose the Syndicate's plans and their network of corruption. The city of Valoria was magnificent, its skyline a blend of futuristic skyscrapers and ancient architecture, symbolizing the balance between progress and tradition. But underneath the shining surface, a web of lies had been carefully woven. Humanity's allies had been fed lies about their intentions, their motives, and their true power. As Carter and his team reached the High Council chambers, they found themselves face to face with Varon, who now stood at the heart of the Syndicate's influence. But he wasn't the man they had once known. The Syndicate had changed him, twisted his mind with promises of power and control. His once steadfast belief in peace had been replaced with suspicion and fear of humanity's intentions. Varon, Carter said, his voice steady, but filled with frustration, we know the truth. The Syndicate has been feeding you lies. They've been using you to divide us, to tear apart everything we've worked for. Varon's eyes flickered with doubt, but he quickly masked it with a cold expression. You don't understand, Commander. The Syndicate offers security, power. The galaxy needs stability, not chaos. Humanity is a threat to that. Your victory over the Empire was nothing but a power grab in disguise. No, Carter replied, his voice gaining strength. What we've built is a future where the galaxy is free from the chains of the Empire. Free from fear. The Syndicate uses the same tactics as the Empire: control, lies, manipulation. We're here to stop that. Varon's gaze hardened. You're wrong. The Syndicate gives us something you cannot. A way to restore order. Carter shook his head. There is no order in oppression, only fear, and the truth is something you can't ignore forever. The galaxy will see the Syndicate for what they really are. With the truth now laid bare, the political leaders of Valoria, who had been blinded by the Syndicate's lies, finally saw the gravity of their situation. They had been pawns in a much larger game, manipulated into believing that humanity's rise was a threat to their prosperity. But the revelation of the Syndicate's true nature was undeniable. Humanity wasn't just fighting for power, they were fighting for a future where systems like Valoria could thrive without fear, without manipulation. The news spread quickly across the galaxy, broadcasting the truth to every corner. Systems that had been on the edge of rebellion now understood the stakes. They saw that humanity was not seeking to dominate, they were seeking to create a galaxy where all voices could be heard, where freedom reigned. But even as the Syndicate's grip on Valoria weakened, Carter knew the battle wasn't over. The Syndicate was resilient, and their influence still stretched deep into the galaxy. Humanity had won a major victory, but their fight for the truth had just begun.